So that's why every month we bring to you one such prominent personality or industry leader to share with us the story, which we will begin in a short while. Before that, a request that kindly stay on mute and keep your videos on if you find it convenient. Our session will go on till 6 o'clock. So out of these 60 minutes, our idea is to keep the 15 minutes towards the end exclusively for any questions you might have. Feel free to punch in those questions in the chat window, and we will take those questions at the end. And without any further ado, I am really happy to welcome today our special guest. Please join me in welcoming Ravin Mirchandani, Chairman Ador Powertron, and who has, despite his really packed schedule, agreed to spare some time for us and to share the stories of Ador with us. A business leader with extensive international development and management experience in energy, defense, and telecommunication. He's passionate about sustainable carbon-free mobility and road safety. Ravin, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks very much, Andy. Apologies. I know you were trying very hard to have a conversation before, and we never got the chance to do it. So I'm going to wing it and try and make you as proud as possible.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Ravin. Really appreciate it. And the audience is here. As you know, the mix includes companies and business leaders that are already associated with us. So they have understood scaling up framework to some extent. And then there are some of them who look forward to getting to learn a little more. And that's too coming from someone like you who understands scaling up framework probably more than most of the people in this domain. So we really look forward to. And um, how about we start right from the beginning? Right from the beginning, when the idea of scaling up came to you. So what was the reason? Why? And then we will take it up further from there. Please enlighten us on that.
As with everything good in my life, it came by accident. We had acquired a company in Australia that made cryogenic valves. It was called Mac Valves, and it was a company that was 2 weeks from bankruptcy, and we were working to turn it around. And in one of the board meetings that I got there, they had brought in these people from a company called Gazelle, who then, helped the management team create a strategy for the next 1,000 days, which was based on the scaling up framework. I guess they were the equivalent of what you do in India, but in Australia. And I looked at it and I thought, this is very simple stuff. It's 101 strategy stuff that we should be able to do also in India. And then when we brought the framework to India in 2015, 2016, there was no company like Gazelles in India. You guys had not started. And so we decided to do it ourselves. So, we took the whole methodology and we kind of fumbled through it. And so we launched it in 2016 in our businesses. And we got through the elementary parts of it quite well. And then we kind of ran out of steam until we met Ajay, many years later. So we came across it in Australia, and we implemented it because it seemed like the right thing to do for our businesses.
There are very few business leaders who have been introduced to the concept of scaling up as a framework as long back as 2016, which is like ninth year running now. So your exposure to the scaling up framework has led to so many stories, and not only in Australia, here in India as well, in 3 different divisions. Any particular pillar out of those 4 which you find is most relevant in the kind of industry that your companies have been operating in, and considering where we are today, Make in India 2024 and Viksit Bharat, what is it?
Yeah, so scaling up is about people, cash, strategy, and execution, right? And the bit that you've got to really focus on is people and strategy, which are the foundational, seminal pillars on which you are going to build your business. It can be quite demoralizing when you look at your competitors who get a big capital infusion from either a big venture capital fund or a PE fund, or do an IPO. And so they've got their cash and they focus straight on execution and getting a very well-paid execution team that deliver on that. And that almost makes you question whether you're going the right way or the right path. But the truth is, if you were to only focus on those 2 things, which is what every VC and every PE tells you to do, because they want to get out in 3 years and then kick the can down the road and give it to somebody else as a problem to fix. those are only going to be short-term successes. The long-term stability and sustainability of the business is never addressed until you focus on the people and have a very, very clear unifocal direction that you're sailing your ship towards. And so if I were to tell you in the context of today, Viksit Bharat, Make in India, all the opportunities that are coming our way, know your North Pole and ensure you build your culture and get the right people to execute, and the rest will happen automatically. Don't just focus on that revenue and that success and that capital raising, because those will come automatically if you've got the basics and the foundations of your business right.
The particularly noticeable is the culture that you mentioned, and I remember during one of our conversations, there is an anecdote you've been sharing about a particular position in Ador Group for which someone approached you just because of the core values that have not only been spoken about on website but also have been demonstrated in the behavior of the organization, in the culture of the organization. You want to share something about it, please?
There are many examples like that now. It's not just one, but we set out, as Vern always says, make sure you don't write your core values on stone because they'll change all the time. And we first defined our core values. Everyone was very excited. We had 10, we brought it down to 6, we then made it 3, and then over time they became 4. And I'll explain why we added the 4th, which is counterintuitive in this scaling up methodology. But our 4 are really to always stay hungry, to never give up, even when it looks like you're going to die. Don't give up, because we are a perfect example of the phoenix rising, because we were only 2 weeks from bankruptcy at our weakest time. The second one is to be brutally honest and allow any opinion to shine in your organization. It might not be the right opinion, but it doesn't mean that it is the wrong opinion. Very subtle difference between not being right and being wrong. Every opinion should be allowed to shine. The third one is our profit engine. I was in a CEO forum once where the question that was asked was, what is the magic, the secret sauce, the profit engine of your business? And the first word that came to my head was innovation. It is what drives everything in our business. And so it is part of our core values. And the fourth one, which we call deserving, but actually is about cash. Protect your cash. People are the purpose, but profit and cash are the means. And we'd forgotten about that. We were so focused on everything else. We forgot that in the end, you must always have more cash than days at the end of the month. And so we brought that back into our core values, being a solid business, don't bet your house. We hire and we fire based on core values. We promote based on core values. And so there have been customers who have commented that we have lived by our core values. They gave us the business because they liked our core values, and they experienced that in the way we delivered our product. More importantly, in the way we serviced them after we delivered the product when the product failed. We've had employees who've said they want to come join us because they've seen our core values on the website. And during the interview process, they experienced some of the core values being lived in the organization. So I think you're in a very happy place if your suppliers, customers, and employees tell you that the core values are alive and truly being lived in the organization. So when Ajay first came to us, I think it was maybe 2022, Ajay, you asked us if we could live to the challenge of you going to anybody and asking them the core values. And we were like, oh yeah, of course you can go to anyone. And Ajay went into a room, the only room he shouldn't have gone into, because it was the room of day contractors, and asked them the core values. And of course they knew nothing about it. But I think if you were to ask them, what do they experience on our campus, they would be able to tell you those core values without necessarily knowing the words that describe them. So to me, I enjoy that the most. I enjoy our core values. I enjoy the fact that we have hashtags for our core values, and we encourage people to use those hashtags in WhatsApp messages to remind people when they're not living by the core values. So you'll see sales hashtagging be hungry to the production team when they're failing on the delivery schedule. You'll see finance sending relentlessly reliable hashtag to the sales team when they haven't picked up their cash. And I like the fact that this is the language that is going on in the organization. And I've even seen some of our customer CEOs hashtag that back to us when we are late on either a service commitment or a production commitment. And that is the experience across the value chain of your organization when your own customers can yank you on your core values, right? And I want to labor this point for 1 minute longer, Andy.
Sure.
Core values are very important. Our little Australian company, when we bought them, they were a $5 million business, and they had an outstanding amount of $2.5 million from Tata Steel. At that moment in time, an Australian business had an outstanding from an Indian business, which was 18 months long. And Tata kept coming back and saying, our purchase order said we will pay you when the valves are commissioned. And our Australian team, being naive, accepted that, except that as with anything Indian, that project was now 2, 3, 4 years late. And Tata was living by the purchase order that we had accepted. So we looked at their core values, and we knew intuitively one of their core values has to be fairness, because that's what Tata stands for. You know that your core values are living across the value chain when your supplier knows that it should be there, even though they haven't seen your core values. We looked at their website, it said fairness. And so we wrote to them saying, you're not living your core value. We live by it, thinking Tata will be fair, and accepted this very silly purchase order. And now you're not being fair to us. And that was the only reason they paid us, right? If your core values are alive and well in your organization, it drives every behavior in your organization. And therefore, your organization is moving towards success, because everybody, suppliers, customers, employees, bankers, experience those core values and do business with you because they know that you will live by what you say you will.
Absolutely impressive. There are very few companies, very few organizations who can claim that indeed it reflects in everything that they do. And it's not just about the companies themselves, but because they have stitched together the ecosystem in such a way that it starts reflecting in the way the interaction with suppliers takes place or the customers take place, and eventually it's all contagious. So it starts spreading all around. That is impressive. But that leads me to my next question, because in 2024, it is possible to look back and say that, hey, we've come this far, and indeed the core values have started to reflect in pretty much everything that we do. But cut to, say, 2021 or 2020, when it was the first step forward to start to implement. And imagine hundreds of employees who possibly were not as aware about core values as they are today. So to make something as academic as core value to percolate down to the last man standing, the last guy in the queue, what were the challenges, and how did Ador team and under your leadership, how did you overcome it?
Oh, we did a lot of things. I think most companies would put them up on a big board, and then they're alive and well in the hall and in the canteen. We do regular training. So we'll do town halls on core values. So, I will be part of those town halls. We'll do them once a quarter, and we'll talk about the core values and examples of where we have not lived them. We have 4 businesses in this campus, and some of them have very good years with core values, some don't, because you get so distracted by growth that sometimes you'll get a little bit weak on your core values because you haven't run through the training programs every quarter. But doing refresher discussions, refresher training programs is very important. We ran a number of videos on the core values, focusing heroes in our organization whose life was defined by that one core value. So somebody was featured for being hungry, another for being innovative, another for being brutally honest, and how their lives living this core value from the early childhood to today helped them. Also allowed people to connect with the core values. We had an app with a red card and a green card where you could give anybody a red card for not following the core value on Teams, or green card to somebody for following the core value. And if you had a red card, then at the end of the month, you had to buy everybody a biryani in your team. Which kind of made it fun. So it was not punitive. It was, affirmative in terms of defining fun as part of any action that we do. We make sure that core values are the second slide in any customer presentation, and we encourage our suppliers to escalate any behavior that might not be living by our core values. So, if a supplier wants to talk to me because we're not living a core value, I'll take that call. But if they want to talk to me for other reasons, then it's not my job. My job is to protect the core values of the company. So we've done many things to try and live them. And I have to say, Andy, there are businesses that do them very well, some that are weak, and there are years where we do them very well and years when it's very weak. And it all comes down to the management bandwidth of the executive team. If we are focused on it, the core values are alive. If you're not focused on it and chasing growth, chasing revenue, then you'll find sometimes that the core values start to recede a little bit, and then that's your red flag to bring back your focus onto it.
Right. Yes, eventually it has to translate into that. So moving from our people and strategy, if we go to execution, there are so many growth tools that scaling up framework brings along, and the fundamental behind KPI is that it must necessarily be measurable. so that the impact can be monitored, improved, and all of that can get into Excel sheets. But beyond numbers, there are qualitative changes that take place, transformational, qualitative transformation that takes place. In context of what Ador has been through, what are the qualitative changes that you see in the organization?
Okay, so I think the fact that we are today an innovative organization, and innovation drives our revenue growth, comes from the fact that we implemented the scaling up process correctly. As a preparation to this, I went and looked at our 2021 scaling up toolbox, and I looked at our 7 strata sheet, and I said, okay, well, let's look at what we said we will do then for one of our businesses, which was traffic. And traffic's about road safety. It was about making products that were going to be beyond the red ocean that we were playing in 2021. And in the 7 strata toolkit, we defined that we would rattle the biggest company in the world for radar speed signs by the year 2024. We would get them to either come to us to make with us, or to threaten us with court cases because we were getting very close to the source of their revenue and profit margins. I had forgotten we had written all of that in 2021, and I was quite pleased to see that we'd achieved over 80% of that. So a strategy is equivalent to saying, I want to go from Pune to Bombay. And now your toolkit is going to define, do you want to go by train, plane, bus, walk, motorcycle? Where are you going to stop along the way? And what is the objective of going to Bombay, and what you're going to do when you get there, right? It's as simple as that. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know how you're going to get there, and you don't want to measure the milestones of your journey there, you're not going to be achieving much. And the benefit of having a strategic outlook and getting it into KPIs allows you to keep the energy going on your journey, because each week, each month, each quarter, you're getting closer to what you had defined as your objective. In India, strategy is not intuitive. We're not a planning culture. And the reason we're not a planning culture is because it's so dynamic. You wake up in the morning and there's no electricity. So what you plan to get hot water is gone. Or you thought you'll get the diesel generator on, but there was a strike, and so there's no diesel. And so now you got to do some other jugaad to get to work. There's a strike, there's a palki, there's all sorts of things. So you've got to constantly make new plans to achieve your objective. And therefore, it seems almost redundant to make a strategic plan. Because in the first quarter only, it's redundant, sab kuch badal gaya. And so as a culture, there is no discipline within most of our organizations in making a strategic plan, right? And so what I like about the scaling up toolkit is it takes this very ephemeral concept of having a very big strategy plan and bringing it down to going from Pune to Bombay and creating your milestones and measuring them 52 times a year or 12 times a year or 4 times a year, based on whether you do these meetings quarterly, monthly, or weekly, or even daily, to be able to keep the energy and keep these temperature checks on the directions you're going. So for us, scaling up and the toolkit allowed us to keep our focus in each one of our businesses on that run rate, 52 weeks a year. It's almost like an ODI. We always say that. You've got, in that you've got 300 balls or 300 working days, and you've got to measure each wicket, each hit, each ball that comes at you, and build your statistics to be able to do better the following year.
So it becomes a ritual. It becomes a habit across the organization. And that takes me to the quote. The Warren likes that quote. He says that routine sets you free. And if routine sets you free, has that happened? You must have experienced it, that routine of reviewing the teams every week. And in fact, in scaling up framework, there are daily huddles as well. So even at HOD level or functional head level, there is a daily huddle that takes place. So has that set people free to do things which are other than the normal, the mundane?
So in the businesses where we do it well, yes. In the businesses where we do it poorly, no. And I think that's the perfect example of the fact that, if you were disciplined with your routine, it would set you free and give you the time to think about more things about growing your business than managing your business. So we have daily huddles, we have the weekly huddles, we have the monthly review, and then we have the quarterly temperature check on the one-page plan. And our Yonder business and the traffic business do it really well. and the Quench EV charger business perhaps not so well. And you can see the difference in their growth and their performance based on the fact that, you know, one is disciplined and the other is not. So yes, routine does set you free. I don't like the term routine sets you free. It just seems to take the innovation fun out of life. But that's the truth. It's why Steve Jobs always wore the same thing, and Obama also wore the same thing, because they didn't want to make the management bandwidth space to decide what they were going to wear. Routine does set you free. And having the daily huddle and attending the daily huddle also gives you a good temperature check as a leader. So, you know, we have so many huddles every day, and I'll choose which one to attend. I'll attend 3 a day. There's probably 10 a day that run across our businesses. And they're a very good temperature check to see the dynamic that's going on and the level of detail that is being presented, whether this team is going to achieve its quarterly or monthly plan.
Right, right. Thank you on that. Ravin, one of the questions that comes to us from a lot of our potential customers is that if there is a shop floor and there's a product being produced, so there is a raw material being procured, it goes through the processing and it is produced and it is dispatched. There's a physical product being taken to the customer, and that's where anything similar to a framework will be highly relevant, because there are measurables and there are steps and there are milestones. But there is management consultancy. There is, for example, we have got the crossword leadership here, retail, where the physical product is not being produced. It is being made available at retail touchpoints. What kind of possible challenges you think they will need to overcome, which are completely different from the kind of challenges that a manufacturing unit would go through? Is it still equally relevant to them, or do they have to tweak a few things here and there?
You know, the biggest example that we use in our businesses and the benchmark we use is Indigo Airlines. Indigo Airlines is a service. They carry bums on seats from Bombay to Delhi, you know, and yet they are our biggest benchmark on efficiency, growth, profitability, discipline, branding, customer loyalty. You know, they are what we want to be, and yet they are nothing that we are. You know, we are a manufacturing organization. They're a service and delivery organization. So I'd say the job of a business is to be profitable, to make sure that the people that contribute to this business have food on the table, and that food on the table always grows at the end of every year, that the business grows, that it's sustainable. Right? Now, no matter whether you are manufacturing, providing a service, or doing something else, in the end, the tenets of the business are the same. You want to grow sustainability. You want to make sure that as the economy changes, you are not badly impacted, and you want to make sure that the people who are loyal to your business and contribute to your success have a very good remuneration for it, and that keeps growing. The scaling up toolkit is about doing those things in any context that you're working. So it works whether you're in India, Australia, or America. It works whether you're in services, or whether you're in manufacturing, or whether you're in consulting. Because in the end, it has nothing to do with your product. It has everything to do with the discipline of managing your business and measuring your journey to your endpoint objective, which is your strategic plan.
Right. Right, and that's how it becomes. That's how it eventually becomes the most important thing. And that takes me to my next question, because recently there was an interaction with one of the software companies. The chairman of the company is absolutely keen on implementing it, but one line down, and there is resistance, because when they come across things like OPSP, it's not easy to swallow OPSP. First of all, it takes many seatings to completely grasp it, followed by the meeting rhythms, because meeting rhythms would mean that the calendars will start looking even more colorful than what they are. People are left with much lesser time to go about doing other things that they're used to doing. And then there are documentation, there is a discovery template, there is dashboard. So the resistance, because they will have to do so many additional things. What piece of advice would you have for such leaders who are facing resistance from within the organization because of so many additional steps that people will have to undertake?
Okay, it's a good question. And I think scaling up focuses a lot on working on the business rather than in the business. It's about getting your direction right and measuring how you're getting to that direction, and then changing what you need to change in your business to realign to the direction you want to go to. So it is not uncommon for mid-management to have some dissonance to that, because they spent 80% of their time working in the business. And therefore now making bandwidth for working on the business is a pain, you know. It's something that you're supposed to do on weekends. It is the job of senior management to spend 80% of their time working on rather than in, and the time of middle management to spend maybe 80% in rather than on. And so my first point would be to say, is there a mismatch between what we're expecting on who should be working on strategy and direction and who should be working on efficiency, right? You will always get that dissonance at that level, and forcing people who are working on delivery to be working on strategy is perhaps the mismatch. It is the equivalent to going to the Indigo Airlines airport manager and then asking him to work on the project on which aircraft types they will buy in 10 years from now. That's just never going to work, because it's beyond the pay grade and competence level. But having said that, if you're really busy in the business, then perhaps I would ask, have you got the right people underneath you? Because you seem, as a senior manager, to be spending too much time doing mid-level jobs. And therefore, there is a question of having a God complex and feeling like you're very productive by sorting out everybody else's problems along the day. And maybe you've got too many passengers in your team who are not doing anything and you're doing all their work. So, I'd be saying there's a pointer there to the quality of your talent and the efficiency of the senior level time spent on managing the business. It is not uncommon. But if you have a focus like that, then I'd say the sustainability of your business would be in question, because that was probably exactly the mindset of Nokia, Kodak, Polaroid, pick a company. The world changed and they didn't know it changed because they was too busy trying to fix the efficiencies of their business as the business was heading to a waterfall.
Right. Highly relevant examples, because they got shunted out just because of not being able to do all the right things at the right time.
Yeah, you could make the most efficient feature phone, but it's pointless.
Correct. So which means it was possibly a case of having not the smartest people at the right place at the right time. And scaling up framework is known to have brought in some big shifts in some of the organizations that has been implemented in, whereby people moved, people were shifted, shunted, a lot of things happened. But it has also given opportunity for much more efficient talent management. Are there any instances from within Ador that you would like to share with us about how talent management has become even more efficient over time?
So one of the things you will find when you if you really implement scaling up the way it should, is that one part of your management team leaves because it just becomes too hard. Now their insecurities and the inabilities to deliver start to become very obvious. The politics within your organization starts to recede, and their opportunities to manipulate the circumstances and meetings start to recede, because your conversations become factual and not emotional, because everything is about what we have delivered and quite clearly measured, right? And you must welcome that, because it allows you to for a metamorphosis of your organization to happen. So we were ossified at the top. We were like a candle with wax that had kind of, all ossified, and the new talent wasn't able to flow up. And when our existing senior management team exited, not because we forced them to, but because in the end, it was not a nice place for them to work. And it was all too hippy-dippy with all of these core values and all these other things that you're trying to do. It allowed us to promote very, very young talent. And so today we've got in a number of our businesses, people in their mid-30s who are running the show. And in other parts of our businesses, women, who would never have been given the opportunity to run shop floors or run typical teams that women wouldn't be running in a manufacturing organization. So we're doing really well. So today women run production, customer service, sales, HR, we got women at all levels of the organization also in software development. So it's changed our business completely, because we promoted team members that never had the opportunity to shine, who now had something to prove, and who were hungry and living our core values and doing the same to the teams below them. So I think the first thing you will find is change within your team structure once you implement scaling up. And as a leader implementing scaling up, you should be ready for that, and you should welcome that.
Fantastic. There are quite a few examples within the Ador family, the rising and shining stars. That is one way of looking at it, where passing on the baton becomes easier so that people can move upward and onward and keep on handing over responsibility so that others also grow. This is, and in stark contrast, there are other businesses which are possibly looking to expand and eventually exit for strategic reasons or for some other reasons, will a scaling up framework be relevant to them to enhance the size in terms of either market valuation or revenues or bottom line, and then eventually exit? To leverage this to accelerate growth for a short period of time, say 3 years?
Yeah, you can answer that question in so many ways. I think, as I said in the beginning, Andy, scaling up is about finding your North Star. And so if your North Star is to grow and sell, then every decision you will make in scaling up is to get you there, and you'll measure everything to get you there, and therefore it'll be a perfect tool to get you there. Because once you know, I want to be 2x or I want to be 3x, and then I want to sell in 1,000 days, then you're very clear about the steps you need to take to get there. So we are running a program we call 3x26, which is to be 3 times our size by April 2026. We're 1.5 years into it. So everything we do is about that, right? And so we've defined it based on revenue and EBIT, and every decision we make is for that. Now, we're not doing it because we want valuation to sell out. We're doing it because we think this is a great time to surf the wave that of Make in India, and we should be able to capitalize on it. But scaling up is the tool that gives us clarity on what it means to be 3 times our size, and what we need to do in the first year and the second year and the third year to be 3 times our size, whether it is in infrastructure, in R&D spending, in new product development, in new geographies, in new markets and new customers. And therefore, in the first 365 days, what you're going to do in the first 700 days, and then in the final 1,000 days to get you on your 3-year plan. So yeah, perfect. If you want to grow and sell, this is a perfect tool to do that, because it gives you the clarity of that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for an elaborate response on this, because I'm sure it will be immensely helpful to a lot of participants here. And one of the things that you mentioned, and that takes me to one of your videos I have watched, which talks about abundant clarity because of implementation of the scaling up framework. So right from the top to the bottom, everybody is then clear about how you mentioned North Star or your North Pole. So everybody knows which direction are we headed in, and the entire team becomes aligned. I will take a small pause here, Ravin, because I want to let all the participants know, we've got 33 of them so far, that there is an opportunity for you to punch in any questions you might have. We will take all the questions towards the end. We have kept aside 15 minutes. I can see a few questions have already flown in, and please keep sending those messages. So starting 5:45, we will start addressing those questions. We've got 10 more minutes. And then that takes me back, Ravin, to a slightly different kind of question that is there an instance where organization-wide implementation of one of the growth tools took place and it happened, but now when you look back, your view of the way it was implemented is completely different from how it was actually implemented? As in, essentially, it was an error, or it should have been done completely differently.
So maybe I'll give you 2 examples on that. The first is, we decided to implement scaling up without you guys for the first few years before we met Ajay. And I think we did the basic stuff quite well. We understood our core values. We knew our BHAG. We kind of had initiatives for the year, and then it all fell away. We didn't know how to measure it per quarter. We didn't know how to communicate it. We didn't know how to get very clear goals. We didn't use the 7 strata boxes. We were kind of lost beyond that. And so you saw a very early uptick, and then it petered out. And then for 2 years, we were kind of floundering, thinking maybe we need another toolbox, until we met Ajay, and you guys brought in a lot of discipline by hand-holding us through the rest of the process, including the meeting rhythms, and all of the great Rockefeller habits. So I think there's one example, which is you can do it, but you won't always get it right. The second one is, you've got to always be ready, as you are with core values and strategy, that it's dream time, right? It's almost as good as smoking some very good ganja and then thinking where are you going to be in 5 years, and you're not always going to get there, right? Because the market changes, economy changes, politics changes, many things changes. Your competitor might get better than you at shit, and so everything you thought you would do can start to slow down. So you've got to be ready that all the stuff you put down, you might be 80% successful, but 80% is a lot better than when you were before you started it. So when I looked at our traffic toolbox, we had said we want to be a separate business. We want to have a PE investment by 2024. And now when we look back at it, you're going, I'm glad we didn't. No, we don't want PE investment. We're on a journey doing it quite well on our own, and we're becoming a global supplier on our own. So there are elements that you will get wrong. There are elements that you will get right. And there is no, I'd say there's no one size fits all, and there's no one right way to do this either. You've got to go in there, go on. I will, I just hope most of my decisions and my direction is going to be right. And if it translates into good revenue growth, good profitability, a healthy culture in your organization, and you as a leader waking up in the morning going, I'm going to work, I'm really happy and I'm excited about it, that means your strategy is working and you're in the right direction. I don't know if I answered your question the way you wanted me to, but you've got to be prepared that you're not always going to get it right, and that's okay. Fail fast, iterate, and go back and do it all over again.
No, that's precisely what I think I was looking for. I did not have any particular answer in my mind either, but I think how you addressed it is that when working closely with a business coach and implementing a scaling up framework is done across so many thousands of organizations. But I think, like you rightly pointed out, it is the discipline that becomes the value add to make things happen. Most of the content is available online and people can implement it if they wanted to, but it is the discipline that is brought on board and that makes the difference.
I
One of
say,
the
it's just to labor that point, Andy, it's the reason many people get a personal trainer. You could watch a video and think that you can do it yourself, but it's your personal trainer that actually gives you the discipline and forces you to do it and doesn't allow you to take the shortcuts and make sure you keep your back straight. And having a scaling up coach is like having that personal trainer that's sitting with you and asking the right questions. So for me, the biggest benefit of a coach is they keep you honest and they call out your bullshit. And so when you're not being disciplined, they call you bullshit. And when you're pretending that you know all the answers, they ask the difficult question, which kind of destroys every concept you might have about everything you know. And so that's really the benefit of having somebody handhold you through the process, because as you said, the toolkit exists. It's quite intuitive. It's 101, writing down what you think it'll be, but knowing the problem you are solving is very different from someone testing whether it's really a problem and whether you're really solving it.
Right, absolutely. My favorite pillar is execution, because like they say, the devil is in the details. The strategy has been put in place, but it's the execution, the grassroots level activity that will translate the strategy into cash eventually. So here, and the beauty of execution is that it gives you as much flexibility as is considered as optimum. So what we are going to do is that instead of waiting till 5:45, we will get into Q&A straight, because I can see on the chat screen there are quite a few questions. We will start addressing questions one after the other, and I will start reading out from the chat screen. The first question is coming from Akash, Crosswords. The CEO of Crossword wants to know, how did you hire and build your leadership team, and how did you expect them to understand your business nuances and delegate all the strategy to them?
Yeah, good question, Akash. There's a lot of learnings from Vern Hainish on this, I think, that we took. Top grading was one of them. And so I'd say first, our philosophy is hire very slow and fire very fast, ruthlessly. Even though you might have a great process for hiring, sometimes you'll screw it up. And when you do, and when you've clearly got someone who doesn't fit your culture, then exit that person, because it's better for them and it's better for you. Be honorable, be dignified, and make sure that they are looked after, and make sure that you help them find another job, but don't have people who don't fit into your culture in the organization. One of the things that we do is that for the senior management team and the level below them, and if the business is really small, all levels, I will be involved in the final interview. So we go through 4 interviews. We go through the HR interview, which is our people and culture interview. We go through the direct line manager interview. We go through a peer interview, and then there's a final interview with me. And that final interview with me, you could almost record, because I'll always ask the same questions, and I'm testing for why they want to come to work with us. Will they fit in with our core values? Have they seen our core values? Can they tell me an example of which one they like and why, or where they have lived that in their lives before? And then I ask them why they particularly want to tell me in one sentence, why you're excited about coming to work for us. And if people haven't done their research, and if they are not excited about your sector, or not excited about you as a business or what you stand for as a culture, then they won't be able to answer those questions. And if they are able to answer those questions, then you know that you have the right person wanting to join you. And so often I will be traveling and the HR team will sometimes make a shortcut and we'll get a middle or senior level manager who doesn't work out in the 90 days because we didn't ask those questions, and which is the most important thing to do. So I think it is very important for a leader to be involved to ensure that you are that last filter. And if you're a big organization, then it should be the direct reports and the reports underneath them. And if it's a small organization, everybody in your organization, to ensure that you're getting the right people inside to promote your culture. The second thing is, I'd say we took the risk to promote talent that would not normally get promoted. We promoted very, very young talent very, very early. And then we made sure that we had the right coaches. So, for us, scaling up and Success Alchemists are the coaches hand-holding those young leaders that we have in the organization. And they have a lot to prove. And therefore, they are open to having a coach. They're open to using a toolkit because this is really clearly helping them. They haven't done this before, and these are the crutches or the guardrails that they're going to use to define their own success. So the quality of the employees, the training that you give them, and the filter that you are as a leader, and the ruthlessness that you need to show to protect your culture, no matter what it means. Sometimes you make enemies. I've had, when we exit people, I've had people post shit on LinkedIn, people who are trying to throw acid on your reputation. You've got to live with that, knowing that, in the end, you're about defining your business, and that's most important, and everything else is water off a duck's back.
So how did you have these coaches for the mid-level and the young people who you promoted? You said they need a coach, right? So is it that the senior people be the coach, or you have outsiders as a coach, or how does that coaching
They're
work?
sitting right here, Akash. They're on the screens here. They're the Success
But
Alchemists.
they're more coaches. They're more coaches for us and maybe the leadership team, right?
I think in our organization, maybe Ajay wants to talk a little bit more because he's involved. But in our organization, they're across the executive management team, hand-holding them through the process. So the way we've divided our businesses is not one big business that does scaling up, but we have like 4 different businesses within that one business that have their 4 subcultures, and they're encouraged to have their 4 subcultures, 4 profit and loss accounts. And so they really manage the businesses as small businesses, and they make their independent decisions. And as part of their scaling up coach, who's their mentor, hand-holding them through the process, keeping them honest and calling their bullshit. So, and then of course, then I spend time with them. But the framework I'm using is also the scaling up framework to discuss whether we are on the right track or not.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. Thanks, Ravin. I'll add to that, Akash, is what in Ravin's case, like he said, that it's been literally the 4th year that we've got into scaling up. 3 years we've done of scaling up. And in that process, what happened as an organization, they were able to identify the young Turks who were able to grow. So if you look at year 1, it did not happen. It happened sometime in year 2. And what really happened is because our association has continued, then obviously the focus keeps shifting down into the organization. We started from the top, but we kept going downwards. So by the time we were in year 3, we were able to tackling even those people. So there was a lot more support system that existed for the second level also, because you percolate into the organization, you don't go directly down. So I mean, that's a shorter answer to his question, to your question.
Superb. Thank you.
Before we get to a different type of question, there's another question from Akash for you, Ravin. How much of the OPSP strategy actually came from you, from you at the top, at the promoter, and how much from your leadership team?
So it comes down to how much you understand your business and how much time you want to give failure. So my recent learning has been, as a leader, you should really have a clear direction where you want to go. And then your team is about validating that, testing that, and helping you execute on that. That's probably the most efficient way to do this. If you don't understand your business and you're in a new business that you've invested in, then it's probably a slightly longer process as you start to understand your management team. They start to understand you, and together you brainstorm and build the North Star for your business, and then plot the direction that you want to go. So for the longest times, we used our, OPSP days out as let's dream, think, and, we came up with directions, but I've been finding that as I've understood the businesses a lot more, I found it more efficient for me to do my own thinking. My job as the leader is to be out in the world and understanding the trends, the directions, what the competition is doing. And so I have the clearest understanding of whether our business is sustainable, whether the technology we're investing in is going to give us the growth that it is. And therefore, with the clarity in my thought, I find it much easier to sit down and go, okay, here's where I think we can be, a 1,000 crore organization in the next 4 years. Now let's talk about, how are we going to get there? What are the tech? What is the product? What is the infrastructure? What are the people? What are the skill sets that we need to get there? And then we test our bullshit about, is this really feasible? Is this really going to happen? And, are we smoking some very good stuff and pretending we're going to get there?
And so a follow-up to that question again from Akash is, are you okay to share the OPSP with the most junior level team members in your team?
Yeah, everybody has it. It's on the wall, and everybody knows what it is. There is always a risk that your competition will get it. In the first few years, we were worried about it. And then we went so far ahead in our development plan that we thought, even if they look at it, they'd be going, this is Greek. I don't understand it. And so today, I have no problem with our competition seeing our OPSP because I don't think it's like the Toyota way. Toyota invites Ford and General Motors to come and look at their factories. You can take lots of photos, but it's in the DNA of the organization. It's not on the wall. It's not in the posters, and it's not on the metrics. Achieving those metrics is part of the DNA, and the DNA is scaling up. So even if the competition copies it, next year we'll be ahead again.
Wow.
Amazing. They're great. Thank you so much, Ravin.
So beautiful. There's a comment from Deepali. Deepali, you wanted to share something with Ravin. So over to you.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
Hi, Ravin.
Hi, Deepali.
Hi. Since you're mentioning the North Star, I must tell you the name of our company is Global North. Okay.
Excellent.
So upscaling and moving has to be in our ethos and in our core values, obviously. But we are into residency and investment immigration, very different industry than what you are. And I'm taking this opportunity to share with you something. I was in the workshop of the Pune workshop, which happened recently, where a table was dedicated to Ador. Okay. And I must compliment you for for the way your team was speaking on all of these things. And by the end of the session, we started banning them from answering questions because they knew everything. We said, okay, every answer of yours is making us adore you more than what you were before. But definitely, I must compliment, and this does not happen in a team without the team leader being so dedicated to what you have been doing over the last 4 years, and that's a big achievement. And today, the only reason I came to listen to you is I said I must know the man behind that team a lot better and to understand what this is. Lovely listening to you. And I really don't have a question. I just have compliments, and I hope you keep doing well and keep motivating all of us to do something similar of what you have achieved.
Thank you, Deepali. That's very kind of you. In fact, it's the Success Alchemist teams here who helped us achieve that, and we've been very fortunate to attract and retain the right talent. So it has very little to do with me. It has more to do with the process and the people who are handholding them. But thank you.
I guess it's also about believing something like this and percolating it down to the last member of the team. I think that's where really it's going to come, and it's going to become a success for this. So we've had a lot of internal thought process moving post our workshop, and you are the icing on the cake for us to decide what we need to do next with them.
Thank you. Very kind, Deepali. Just the comment on that North Star. A lot of people ask me what that means, knowing your North Star. And I define it by saying it's knowing when to say no. In the first few years, we were very distracted by growth. Just let's take everything to grow. And then you can take a lot of bad business, be in a lot of bad sectors, make a lot of bad decisions on which companies or products to invest in. The North Star is about clarity, knowing what to say no, and walking away from most of the business opportunities that come to you because you know what you can succeed in and following that.
Wow, lovely.
So Dipali, I'll add to here, Ravin is being very modest. I think one of the secrets for the success of Ador is also the fact that Ravin gives direction and a lot of freedom for his leadership team to work. So,
Yes.
you know, one of the best thing, he is absolutely hands-off leader, right? He's involved, he knows what's going on, but he's hands-off. He's not looking over the shoulder of all his leaders. And I think that's what really gives us. So he gives them the authority and he gives them the rope also to go and make mistakes. But he's supportive. I think that's his biggest strength. I mean, Ravin, and the fact that he's brought in a lot of talent who's young and energetic. And I think that's the secret sauce, that is really helping Ador as an organization, actually.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Totally agree with you.
Thanks, Ajay, for summing it up
Thank
so well.
you. Thank you for time.
Yeah, thank you, Deepali, for sharing your thought. We have a question from Guru Raj. Guru Raj is, well, this is a very typical question, a very typical, a scenario where there is a middle level management. And on one hand, they have top level management. On the other hand, there is customer. And more often than not, the priorities on both the ends are conflicting. So the question is that what are the tips for middle level managers who struggle between either keeping the customer happy or keeping the company happy when the final decision rests with the leadership team? How should they deal with it?
It's a difficult question, and there's so many ways again to answer it. But I think if your core values are clear, we always, when we come to a point of what is the right thing to do, we come back to what is our core value. So if the question is, yaar, customer ne 2 baje bulaya hai, and 2 o'clock at night that thing failed, and in order to keep them happy, I'm going to have to fly the guy with the spare part to make it work, then it comes down to what is your core value, right? And why does the customer give you business? And if that is clear to you, within our deserving core value is relentlessly reliable. We will always be relentlessly reliable to our customer, which doesn't mean that the product doesn't fail, but it means when it fails, we will never let you down. We'll be there with you. And so I think if you look at any decision between middle management and senior management or customer and company through the prism of your core values, you will always make the right decision. Your core value will also tell you whether you want to buy a business to grow, whether you want to invest in a business to grow, whether you want to invest in a product to grow. I would say look at the prism of your direction. Where do you want to be? What's your BHAG and what's your 3-year plan? And what is your core value state about that very situation? And you'll have a very clear answer.
Beautifully insightful, Ravin. That reminds me of one of the case studies I've come across. In fact, there's a 30 minutes long YouTube video on that when in late 90s, Reliance was building right from scratch, quite literally right from scratch, a $6 billion investment in Jamnagar refinery. At one point in time, because everybody else had said that it will take a minimum of 6 years to put it up, and they said we will do it in 3 years. So at one point in time, they figured out that a gasket, for the uninitiated, a gasket is a rubber ring which is typically used in a cooker at home. A gasket was missing. So a chartered flight was arranged to take it from Chennai to Jamnagar overnight so that it could be deployed, installed, commissioned, and so the project should move forward. So at that point in time, somebody somewhere must not have looked at the actual incremental cost of an aircraft from Chennai to Jamnagar, rather the benefits of finishing the project much earlier than planned. And that's what eventually translates into all the good things happening at the right time for that company. We are
yeah, I think just to labor that point, Andy, if there's an Air India flight going from Pune to Delhi and an Indigo flight going from Pune to Delhi, and if you have a meeting at 5 o'clock and the flight arrives at 4 and both airlines arrive at 4, I can guarantee you 99% of people will buy the Indigo flight, even if it's more expensive, because they never let you down. Because their core value out there is about on time is a wonderful thing. They don't need to train me on their core values for me to know that they will only give priority to being on time, right? And therefore, I will give them the business for that. So if your customer knows what you stand for, and if you stand very clearly for never letting them down, that business will always come. So it's not the incremental cost of that flight. It's the fact that you will get another few $1 million in business from them continuously without you trying, because they remember the experience of you being on time or living by your core values.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Ravin, for that. We have got only 4 more minutes left before we wrap. And I have one last question which we can accommodate, followed by a quick NPS that we will carry out. The question is coming to me from Afzal. Afzal is part of the Crosswords team. And the question is, what is, according to you, what is the most important parameter that should be kept in mind while making the KPIs and quarterly priorities for the leadership team?
Oh, there's again so many answers for that. I think your goal must be meaningful, it must be achievable, and it must be measurable. That's the first test of the bullshit of the KPIs for your team. If you can't do either of those three things, then it's not worth having. But you've got to define your outcome quite clearly in terms of not just revenue, but also cash, also profit, and also happiness. And that happiness has to be your team's happiness, and you've got to be able to measure that. You've got to be able to define it, and you've got to be able to measure it as often as you measure revenue and profit. Because if your team is not happy and you can't quantify what makes them happy, then your business is not a sustainable business. So I'd say, when you're setting your goals, first you need to know where you're going. That's your North Star. What is your 3-year direction? How that translates into a 2 and a 1-year direction. Then how that 1-year direction translates into the quarter, and how that quarter translates into the month, and the month translates into the week. That's your roadmap, and that's the toolkit that scaling up gives you. So your KPIs really cascade quite easily once you know where you're headed. Because then you know each step of the way what you need to achieve, and therefore whether you're 50% of it or 150% of it. But I'd encourage you, please also focus on the happiness and how you measure that happiness within your team, because that in the end is the difference between a good business and a great business.
Absolutely enriching and so insightful, Ravin. Thank you so much. And the 2 key takeaways. Number 1, if it is not measurable, it cannot be monitored, it cannot be improved. And that's why NPS is a critical component in the overall scheme of things, which we will move to shortly. NPS, for everybody else, Net Promoter Score, which means a feedback on what was your experience like during the webinar today. And it is extremely important for us to continue to enhance the webinar in terms of what gets delivered. It should be enriching and insightful, and we should keep improving on and on. So in a short while from now, we will demonstrate, I will display on the screen a QR code. And I would like to request everyone to please take a minute to please answer just a few questions there, so that your feedback gets captured. And as Ravin has mentioned and highlighted so many times, that to measure is extremely important, because it is the first step to be able to improve. And we want to continually keep improving on our webinars, and that's why this QR code. So I would like to really request each one of you to please spare a minute, answer those questions. There are not more than 4 questions there. And once that is done, we are, and by the way, another important element in scaling a framework is to be on time. And I think we are at 1 minute to go before it is 6 o'clock. So just as the NPS will get punched in, it will be 6 o'clock. And in the meantime, Ravin, thank you so much for having spare time. We all know that you have had a really packed schedule. In fact, even tomorrow you have an extremely busy day, Sonalika told me. And despite that, you spared time. And it was immensely beneficial to us at Success Alchemist, as well as to everybody else who logged in. At some point in time, I noticed there were 33 participants in all, and each one of them, I'm sure, has benefited immensely from this. Sincerely, thank you.
Thanks very much for having me. It was an honor. Thanks.
And a big thank you to all the people who've taken out time and attended this webinar. Please keep in mind that we do this on the last Thursday of every month. So do join us on our subsequent webinars also. As well, we also have an workshop that's coming up on 21st of September in Pune. The same one like Dipali you attended in June. We have another one that's happening in 21st of September. So please join us for that if you are interested.
Sure.
With that, it's a wrap. Thank you, each one of you, for having spare time and joined us today. And as soon as you finish your NPS service, please click on submit. We will keep capturing all the feedback and subsequently share it with each one of you. It will greatly help us to continue to keep improving. Thank you once again, and enjoy the rest of your evening. It's a wrap from our side.
Good job, Andy. Great session.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank
Andy.
Thank you for having.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Great show, Ravin. Andy. Very, very nicely done. Very interesting.
My job was easier. I just had to ask questions. So it was Ravin who thought through and gave. I really found his answers insightful, very meaningful, highly relevant for people who understand framework well and people who don't understand it so well. But he made it appear so simple and related it to some real life situations that the company has overcome with the help of the framework. So it was him. It was good. अच्छा था, बढ़िया था. And now I think we should look at the NPS भी. कितने आपके उसमें दिख रहा होगा ना आपको?
Sandesh, can you display the NPS?
And thanks to
When you
Rajesh.
spoke about the ganja, I almost fell off the chair,
Couldn't get off that statement.
You want to stop recording?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.